You're listening to The Support Report with Be Present, where we share real stories from young adults and how support changed their lives.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning into another episode of The Support Report. We are Be Present. I am your co-host, Justin Peters, joined by always Kiara Riga. Kiara, how are you?
I'm not too bad. How about you, Justin?
Just doing fine and dandy. I'm looking forward to, and I can't wait, is this conversation. So joining us today, Laurel Hope. She played a huge role as the supporter when her partner Will was diagnosed with testicular cancer in November 2020. She's got a bunch of goodies for us, and hopefully we get into a few other good conversation topics. But Laura, welcome to the podcast. Excited to help untail your story a little bit. So let's start there with Will. November 2020 sounded like he had a bit of a scare and things unfolded very quickly after that. Do you mind just kind of giving us a summary of Will's story and kind of the subsequent months that led after?
Absolutely. Yeah. So it did. Things happened very quickly. 2020, as we all remember, was already a very trying year. And Will had been saying, I feel like there is a lump on my testicle. And I didn't believe him, which is, of course, something I, later felt a lot of guilt about. But I was like, I don't feel anything. Like, it feels fine, And I told him, you have to stop complaining about it unless you're willing to get it checked out. And so finally, he got an appointment with his GP, and he went in on a Friday at like 10 a.m. She felt it. She was like, amazing. She took really detailed notes. She did not like the feel of this. And what we found out later is testicular cancer is very common. Will, at the time, was 27. He turned 27 like a week before all of this went down. But it's a really common cancer for men that age. It's the most common cancer for young men. So she did not like the feel of it. She wanted him to get an ultrasound that day. So he went up to get an ultrasound, and they were like, "Ooh, we can't squeeze you in until probably early December." And this was November 6th. And so he was like, "Oh, okay." And so he left, and he called me from the, on his way home. And I was like, "I don't like that. That's what, like, I don't like that she's concerned. I don't like that we're waiting all this time, like weeks to be seen." And so when he got back to our apartment, he received a call from the urologist that works with this general practitioner, and he was on his day off. But she emailed him again these very detailed notes. She was truly amazing. It's unfortunate that a lot of people don't have people in their corner, but the doctors took it seriously right away, which was unfortunately a rarity, but very fortunate in our case. And he emailed Will, and then called him saying, "I'm the urologist. I don't like the sound of this. I want you to go to the emergency room right now. Use my name. They'll look at you. I'm not saying they're going to like remove your testicle or anything right now, but like you need to get to the emergency room." So suddenly it was like, oh, this is a very serious, something is going on. So we get to the emergency room, and this was November of 2020, and we live in New York City, and I couldn't be with him. So I was in the waiting room. We were separated. Fast forward really quickly. We were told it looks like cancer, looks like testicular cancer. They needed to go ahead and do what's called an orchiectomy, which is removing the testicle. They couldn't get a surgeon to come that night. Just all of this red tape, and I'm in the waiting room this whole time. I'm freaking out. I'm calling his mom. I'm calling, he's calling me with the doctors, like putting me on speaker. It was just like, it was a lot of back and forth. Felt like the longest, like 26 hours of our lives. And eventually they just decided, okay, we're going to keep him overnight. We're going to schedule him for surgery at like 6 a.m. the next day. He'll be the first surgery. And here we go. So we had a plan. And again, they had said it does look like cancer, but it's testicular cancer. Like, hopefully we'll remove the testicle and we'll be fine. Which for many men is the way it goes. For many men, they remove the testicle and then they move to surveillance, and that's pretty much as far as it goes. So then the next morning they did the orchiectomy, and then we started the waiting game, which anyone that has ever had scans, right, just like waiting for that pathology report is the longest couple weeks of your life. But we were feeling like pretty like, okay, like maybe this is going to be the end of it. But also we were told by some of the doctors that when they looked at his abdomen, it had likely spread, but we weren't sure yet. So we did get the report back, and it was in fact cancerous. And they needed to bring him back in, and they discovered that it had indeed spread to his lower abdomen. And they wanted to do what's called an RPLND, which is basically they cut you open. And we were very fortunate. They used a Da Vinci robot to do Will's RPLND, but for a lot of men, they like literally take out all your organs, and then they remove all these lymph nodes, and then they put your organs just like it's like the game of Operation, like literally like Operation. So it was a pretty intense surgery. It ended up being about 12 hours. We were hoping it'd be 8 hours, but it ended up being 12 hours. And again, it's 2020. I couldn't see him. Like I couldn't.
What a terrible time to. We've had multiple guests that have gone through this experience in 2020 and into 2021, and it's just not good.
It's like no good time to get cancer. Certainly, always sucks. But this was like just I felt really far away. And so they did this crazy surgery. They removed all of these lymph nodes. They tested them, and about half of them were cancerous. So they were like, this has spread further than we feel comfortable with. We need to move to chemo. So then 4 rounds of chemo later, Will is cancer-free. And we are coming up on the 2-year anniversary of when he was diagnosed, but we are over a year cancer-free. We've moved to scans every year. Soon it'll be every 2 years, then it'll be every 5 years. It's very exciting. So that's kind of the abridged version. Just again, the 2020 thing. During chemo, I was initially told that I would be able to be with him, go to chemo with him. And I was like, great, I'm going to be there every day. And they changed the rules the Monday we started. So Monday I went with him expecting to be let back, and they sent me home. And that was one of the, there were moments that were really hard for me that I didn't expect to be so hard. Like Will losing his hair was one of the most difficult things for me. He handled it much better than I did. And we were just on the couch watching TV, and he ran his fingers through his hair, and just all of a sudden his hand was full of his hair, and I lost it. I was, for the first time he looked like he started to really look sick. And that was hard for me. Not even so much Will, but for me, it was really hard. So anyway, we got through chemo, we got through cancer. He's amazing. He's doing really, really well. His hair,
gorgeous.
Chemo curls.
Yeah, for real.
Oh my gosh. Chemo curls are real, guys.
Does that happen to everybody? Because my good friend Mason also had testicular cancer. He had straight short hair for the most part. And he came back and he was so curly that first month or two after when his hair started growing back.
Yes. It's amazing. Like, I think from what I've heard, it seems like almost anyone who's had chemo, it happens. Like, no matter what type of chemo it is, like, it comes back curly. So
yeah,
the one and only perk of chemo.
I'm on an oral chemo, and so I lost like 3/4 of my hair, and now it's starting to grow back, and it's in like crazy ringlets. But then I have the straight parts.
Oh, but then you have the other part.
It doesn't know what it's doing yet. But yeah, the chemo curls, I've heard mixed feelings about them, but like on the people it works for, it works. It's like really cool.
Yeah.
Laurel, what's your take? You like the chemo curls on Will?
I love the chemo curls. I will say
they work
though,
for Will.
They work for Will. Will looks very cute with them, but I will say there was an awkward phase as he was growing it out. It looked a little awkward. He also I don't think anyone looks their best on chemo, like during chemo, but Will looked like a cue ball fully because he was on all these steroids. So his face was so puffy and big, and he was so bald, and it was just poor guy. Now he looks great. He looks prime.
So, I didn't quite get far enough back in your Instagram to see if you were posting some things real time with Will's cancer journey, but you are very active on Instagram, mostly in the health and wellness space. But I do see Will pop up fairly frequently, and you talk about his cancer journey as well. Was there communication between the two of you and comfort level with you sharing about Will's cancer journey? Is he also very into Instagram and very okay with you documenting the journey, or did you have to have a conversation with him about it?
Yeah, we did have a conversation. So yes, I run my health and wellness business via Instagram. And when all this was happening, I sat down with Will, and at first I was like, okay, if I'm not on Instagram, people are going to be concerned. Like, I need to just should I just tell them we're dealing with something? Should I tell them what's going on? Like, we're very open and honest communication wise. And he was like, I think we should share about this. It was his idea, actually. And I think it's one of the most courageous things he's ever done, because we've had friends say, I'm checking, I'm in the shower and I'm feeling myself up. I'm like checking my testicles, because it's very, it sounds like your friend too. Like it's a really, really common cancer in young men. Fortunately, it's treatable, especially if it's caught early. And so Will was really like, let's share about this. And there were certainly things we kept off of Instagram, but, I'm very active and open on there. And I really think I actually connected with a lot of really amazing, I call them my testy besties, really amazing like caretakers, usually unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know, falls on women, on partners or mothers, caring for these men. And I connected with a lot of them. And it was nice because I felt like I could sort of be the voice. I could sort of say these things that like people don't want to say, people don't want to admit to. Like, I hated being a caretaker. I hated it. I didn't thrive. It doesn't come naturally to me. It was really hard. I think some people really flourish. And I was not one of those people. And so in being open and honest about that, I really connected with a lot of other women that were like, oh, thank goodness. I thought I was supposed to be crushing this and I'm not. So that was nice. So, Will was really open. I mean, we actually, when he started to lose his hair, we live streamed shaving his head.
Oh, nice. Mm-hmm. I saw the picture. I saw the post-buzz picture, but I didn't realize you guys live streamed it as well.
Yeah, we live streamed it and it was a blast. And Will made a playlist. It was like Willow Smith. I whipped my hair back and forth, like he made a whole playlist. And, we tried to we tried to find joy or silliness in the really awful thing that was going on. And I think that was really important. And I will say too, like, we did know he was going to survive. And I definitely think that's an important part of our story. And it's just so sad that not everyone has that. But that was never something that we really had to grapple with. I mean, of course we did. Of course we were always like, but there is a chance, like and you try not to let your mind go there. And that also was an interesting thing, I think both of us had sort of survivor's guilt a little bit. Like, we shouldn't be complaining because we know Will's going to survive, or like, I shouldn't be sad because I know he's going to survive. And that was kind of a hard thing to walk, right? Because it was like, oh, so many people have it worse and so many people don't survive this. And that's also hard. And so I think that was sort of a balancing act as well.
Kiara,
survivor's guilt is such a tricky thing. I mean, as someone with a eventually terminal diagnosis, like, I hear people say this all the time, like, oh, I shouldn't be complaining because it's so much worse for you. It's like, everyone's experience is so valid. I haven't had IV chemo yet. I will. And so Will's experience might have even been more difficult than mine. And so, like, easier said than done from my side, but please don't feel that way, because every single experience is so valid.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
That's hard.
I did want to ask you though, I often, and you kind of alluded to this, feel that the caregiver role is the hardest of anyone within the cancer world, because we have a treatment plan and the doctor's working with us, and we're kind of in survival mode, whereas you have to be thinking about everything. And we all know you can't pour from an empty cup. So how did you prioritize yourself while also being a caretaker for Will?
Yeah. Definitely another balancing act for sure. And again, this was 2020. Had this been any other time, we would have really been able to kind of rely on friends and family. But when he started chemo, he was immunocompromised, and we couldn't have people come and help. And that was hard because it did feel like it all fell on me. I think I run a health and wellness and nutrition business. And for me, I knew that continuing these very simple habits was really important. One thing that I really tried to do, and I think until people are in this state, chemotional is very real. But so is like anesthesia. Like after anesthesia, people can get really emotional. So Will never wanted me to leave like the apartment. It was very scary for him, and a lot of it was like all of the drugs and all of the steroids and all of these things that he was on. But I made a very specific point to leave our apartment every single day. That was really, really important for me. And whether that was, and again, this was 2020, right? This wasn't really, I couldn't really go like anywhere except for like walks and stuff. And again, once he was immunocompromised, we weren't going to the grocery store. We weren't going to the laundromat. Like we weren't going inside places. But I am a runner. I continued running. I continued a running practice, continued getting outside. And I continued just some sort of moving my body, in whatever way that felt good. I really tried to continue to eat well. And it's interesting because I'm very much an emotional eater. And so you'd think, oh my gosh, you just go totally off the rails. But Will wasn't really eating much. So it was almost easier because I just made sure to get him his whatever he would eat. I'd love to be like, oh my gosh, I only fed him organic, and I made him soups, and I like made him like spirulina, whatever. Like, no, whatever he would eat is what we would give him. Which was great advice that someone gave me for chemo. It was like, he's going to not want to eat. He's going to be nauseous. He's going to just whatever you can give him. And that a lot of times looked like butter noodles. Like butter noodles was great. Like he could keep it down, and the butter adds adds calories, right? Or like I'd make him smoothies and I'd just put like a bunch of nut butter in there, just calories, right? Just trying to get him to eat something. But I tried to continue to eat at least one vegetable a day, like these little tiny milestones that I felt that I could take on. And I was fortunate that I had these habits in place before this all happened. I think the stress of being a caregiver is so intense. And just your mind also kind of starts to go because you have all of this information. So trying to make it easier for yourself, a great piece of advice that someone gave me is for doctor's visits, just hit record, like voice memo on your phone, and just have that running, because I feel like I blacked out the first like 2 months of any doctor visits. I'm like, wait, what was I supposed to do? So having that was really helpful. It's true. You cannot pour from an empty cup, and it's hard and it feels selfish sometimes, but it's just so much better for the person, because there were days that I was not giving myself what I needed, and I would snap at will. And then I'd feel worse. Because I'm like, oh my gosh, here's this poor guy that has cancer. And I'm just yelling at him that he can't, get his own granola bar or whatever, and it was, it really quickly, you see, like, it's not like, you got to take care of yourself. And just being open with your partner or whoever you're caregiving for. I think that's important too, is like having that conversation. They might not like it either. Like they might not, like I said, Will did not want me to leave. And me saying like, I know you're the one that has cancer and I shouldn't really be telling you what I need, but I'm glad I did. I'm glad that I made that point. And so is he. Now looking back, he's like, oh yeah, of course, like you needed to get out.
Did you?
So, yeah.
Were you able to maintain a semblance of your guys' relationship as well? I mean, of course you were supporting him and he was doing what he could with you too, but in terms of like your guys' romantic interests, date nights, things like that, especially during chemo and treatment as well, did you guys do any planning around that or try to like keep romance and flair afire, or was it like, yeah, let's figure out this cancer thing?
It was really interesting, right? Because again, like, he's 27, right? And like, I'm 20, like I was 27 at the time, and young couple, like,
how long were you guys together or been together at this point in
time? 7 years.
Okay.
Married for, oh wait, no, I'm sorry. This was 2020. We've been together now almost 8 years. So at the time, 6 years.
Okay.
We were married already. We like snuck in right before COVID. We got married in 2019. But we were together for like 4 years before then. So it was really interesting in that sense. I love talking about this. I hope like this is okay.
Bring it on.
But at first, when he first got his orchiectomy, shockingly, the orchiectomy is a pretty quick recovery. It's pretty fast, like all things it seems like it shouldn't be because it's a testicle. But it's actually a pretty quick recovery. So then it was like sort of fine. We loved joking about it. Like, honestly, you guys, like, you can't tell. Like, if I saw Will, like, and I didn't know, like, I would have no idea that he only had one testicle. Like, you can't really tell. But then after the surgery, he was pretty much immobile for an entire week. Men that have to have the manual RPLND, it's like 4 weeks. It's like even longer. So after that, it was there was nothing physical really happening. And what we later found out, is that sometimes the RPLND can mess with nerves and can lead to what's called retrograde ejaculation. And so suddenly we had all these fertility questions.
Yeah.
And we had planned on banking sperm. For anyone with testicular cancer, testicular cancer does not necessarily affect fertility. You only need one testicle. You only need one healthy one, like creating sperm. Like it does not mean anything for fertility. However, some of the treatments, those might. They're still not really sure about chemo and fertility. There's just not enough evidence to suggest anything either way. It's also, fertility is such a tricky thing in general that many men just may have had issues before. It might not have been the chemo. Maybe it was the chemo. We're just not really sure. So we'd planned on banking sperm, and then all of a sudden there was no sperm to bank. So he actually had to have another surgery where they removed part of his remaining testicle to get sperm. Wow. And then we have that frozen. Yeah, it was just an interesting thing. Like, again, I think advocating for yourself and for your partner is so important. These things that, they told us fertility wouldn't be an issue, but we never thought to ask about after the surgery. So that's another thing, like, advice, if anyone's dealing with this, is like, just ask so many questions. Even if you feel like that question has been answered, ask it in a different way, ask it another time, like, until you are sure, until you feel confident in the answer. Like, it's okay to continue to ask questions, right? So anyway, there was no like real intimacy happening. And then chemo came, and chemo, no, I mean, really, kind of knocked him on his butt
I'm sure.
for a while there for those 12 weeks. But we did try to continue to do weekly date nights. those got really interesting really quickly. A lot of times it was us trying to like watch a movie and Will falling asleep. But it was like, it worked. It was fine. After he recovered, that's been our thing. We continue to do weekly date nights, and it's been a really, really important part of our relationship. And I would say, like, sex drive wise, he also recovered pretty quickly post chemo. It's kind of amazing. Like, you're just poisoning yourself. I mean, chemo is just poison, right? We're just poisoning your body. And then it's kind of amazing how the body can recover from that. It's pretty cool. What they don't tell you until after is that you have to use condoms for a year because you're toxic. Like, we'll also for a year after had to pee sitting down. Yeah. Had to pee sitting down. Like, so anyway, like the things that are coming out of you are still like poisoned by this chemo. Anyway, I just think that's a fascinating tidbit.
I had no idea. We've had, I think your conversation 24 on the podcast, and we have talked about the fertility aspect a lot. I think it's important for us to harp on that, especially as we're geared towards young adults and they're making some of these decisions right now. And we're supporting some of the supporters that are also having some input in some of this decision as well. And it's just atrocious that some people weren't educated around the fertility issues that might come up prior to some things happening. So setting all of that aside, I did not know about the peeing, like having to sit down and pee or putting condoms on for a whole year.
It's so interesting. And some people say 6 months. Initially, we were told a year. I was like, let's not mess with that. Let's do a full year because I don't want somehow my uterus to be poisoned. But yeah, it's a really, I think if it's a man dealing with cancer, I feel like just bank the sperm, like because it's pretty simple. Like just do it. Obviously, women, unfortunately, this is a lot harder. You can't just bank our eggs. A lot more invasive, but yeah, it is. It's a whirlwind because even if you think you don't want kids, I mean, it's just a big decision to make as a young adult. Like, hey, now decide your future. It's like, okay, I'm just trying to pay off my student loans. Like, what's going on?
Yeah, especially if you haven't had the conversation with your parents yet, and then your parents are in the room, and like doctors asking if you want to have kids. Like, are you sexually active? It's like so many weird invasive things at the worst timing possible.
Yeah. I went through all of that when I was first diagnosed, but what I didn't realize is how exorbitantly expensive it is to freeze eggs. Is it the same for sperm? And do you have any resources if people maybe don't have the means to bank their sperm?
It's stupid expensive, just like everything in our healthcare system. I wish that I did have better resources. But I don't. It's just expensive. And we were lucky. We had good insurance fertility stuff is absolutely not covered by insurance. Like, oh my gosh. So it was nice because we didn't have a lot of out-of-pocket expenses. Otherwise, we sort of used everything to freeze sperm, unfortunately. But they do have kits where for men, they'll send you a kit in the mail. You'll do your thing. And then you can send it back. It's crazy. I mean, it's amazing. The difference between sperm and eggs is just bananas.
Yeah. And things are even more complicated now with Roe v. Wade too, and all of that nonsense that got brought up there. But once again, we ranted about that in another podcast. I don't know if that's really well suited for this, but as we wrap up the conversation, Kiara, anything else that you feel like from Laurel's lens you would really like to ask prior to her, sharing a little bit of where we can connect with her and re-engage? And honestly, you should probably plug the health and wellness business as well. It seems like it just all interlaps pretty well together.
It totally does.
So Kiara, I'll flip things over to you to kind of wrap this up. Anything else we missed out on?
No, I think, Laurel, you're so amazing at being just so open and honest about this stuff. And like, I've never heard a caregiver say that they hated being a caregiver, but that is such an important conversation. So I just want to say thank you so much for being so open and coming on here. No further questions. You've been
Laurel, tell us, where can people connect with you if they resonated with something you said today? They'd like to stay connected and, reach out, maybe say hi. What's a good place?
Yes. So yeah, I'm most active on Instagram. My Instagram is Laurel Hope Hart. HART for heart. So yeah, LAUREL, Hope, HOPE, Heart, HART. And yeah, don't be afraid to drop me a DM. Like I said, I have all these amazing testy besties, even if it's not testicular cancer, even if it's not cancer, like, you know what, better if it's not cancer. Let's just be friends instead. But truly, I think it's really important to be open and honest. And I appreciate you saying that, because I think vulnerability makes us feel less alone, and we're not alone, right? Like, whatever you're thinking, your deepest, darkest thought is someone else is probably thinking, and we're all just too afraid to say it.
So you gave us actually a good amount of advice around good support, but we always do like to end with the question, what does good support look like to you? And feel free to elaborate on something that you've already talked about, and or another thought that comes to mind if something else is really jarring out at you.
Yeah. Oh, that's so great. Don't underestimate just like acts of like people knowing you're thinking of them. So, I mean, the amount of like $5 Starbucks gift cards that my friends or people in my orbit would send me, that really meant a lot to me, was really great and helpful. And again, this was 2020, right? So they couldn't come physically be there. That's like another great option. And even if you don't have the funds to do that, just like a quick line, like, thinking of you, you don't even have to ask how people are doing, because they're probably not doing well if they're dealing with something like this, but just a quick something. Just, I'm thinking of you, or, $5 Starbucks. Like, that was so helpful. Just like little things like that. I think showing someone that you are on their mind is really impactful and powerful.
I would 100% agree with that. Laura Hope, what a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on, sharing so much great advice. Say hi, and congratulations to Will. Hopefully he continues to stay cancer-free, but really excited to stay connected with you. And maybe in the future too, you teased it before we actually press record that you and Will might be putting a podcast together around his testicular cancer journey as well. So we'll share that out whenever that comes out as well, and let the audience hear from you firsthand.
Yes. Oh, thank you so much for having me. This was awesome. What a fun convo.